Okay, so you have a key plan, which is fine, and you have a standard concept setup. Now, the thing about this is, okay, it's a concept set of drawings. In the previous houses we did was for a family, so that's what they call an uneducated client. So it's likely that if you're doing a series of houses for of a large scale like this, the guy who's your client, he kind of knows what he's doing. So he's either done it before, he understands a little bit of the process, or he is he has been a builder and now he's decided to make money instead. Um, so in that case, the concept drawings might be slightly different to the type of drawings that you would do for an uneducated client. So for example, if we go to the level 0 here, so we got a plan, and actually this is a pretty good one. I mean, there's probably actually more information here in some kinds of ways than we need. I mean, the usual way is that you don't show the construction at this stage, because if you show the construction, the first thing the client is going to do, like if you're with a builder client, for example, he's going to go, "What the hell is happening to those walls there?" When you don't actually want to talk about the walls, you just want to talk about the house itself. You're talking about the overall product and what it looks like. So you're still at the stage where you're selling the product. So I would either make them white, as always, or make them black. So there's no information in there that anybody can pick up on, because you have to control the discussion, because you'd be surprised as to how crazy some people are. It's not that they're crazy, but their priorities are different to yours. So they might have specific issues with this, a double wall in this situation, or something that they've had before, and they will just focus on that, and they won't talk about anything else. So the entire meeting could be a waste of time. So what I'm saying is, unless you want to talk about something, take all the detail out of it completely, because you need to just focus on what you're going to talk about. Okay. Again, we're still at concept stage, but if we go down here, let's just zoom out a bit. If we go down here, it says at the bottom, concept design. But remember, the client is asking you for 6 houses. He's not asking you for 1 house. So if you say concept design, then show the entire building. What you could call this drawing, rather than having to do it again, you could call it typology ground floor plan. So it's the type of house. So you're specifically talking about the type of house. Otherwise, you have to show everything. Otherwise, he's going to get completely confused, because if I just go in here, let me just get this little thing up and running here. If you have a house like this on a sheet, and it's a row house, and you show it to somebody, and it's just, in isolation by itself, people just get completely confused. You'd be amazed how people get confused about this. Even if you say to them again and again, this is a row house, this is a row house, they'll say, well, what happens on this wall? What happens on this wall? So what I'm saying is, remove all that confusion from the thing. So the easy way to do that is that every time you make something, you either show the adjacent houses. I think this is the actual end of the terrace, is it? So we won't worry about it in that case. Let's just rub that out. But you would show all the houses as far as you can, and maybe you break it here or something. So there's no mistaking what's going on here. And since it's also ground level, you should also show what's happening outside the house on both sides, at least to the level of the pathway out here. So if there's a cycle lane here, if there's a car park space, this has stopped working. If there's trees out here, because it's concept stage, what you're describing here is the actual entry sequence into the house. Yeah.
We have no requirements on what's in the courtyard.
Yeah.
Which is the only thing we have.
Yeah.
The other thing is just water.
Yeah. You have no requirements on it, but you will have to consider it, because you can't design the junction of the house with the ground unless you at least have a notional idea as to what's going on there. I mean, it could just be grass. So if they don't give you an idea, then assume it's landscaping of some description. But basically, the house design doesn't stop here. It stops out here. It stops on the center of the road on the public side, and it stops a couple of meters inside the courtyard based on the ownership requirements. So for our purposes, it's just as far as it takes to design the house. So I would at least indicate that this is, give each one a number. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you're actually saying is, this is the product, and this is how many you're going to have. And then later on, you can actually schedule all this stuff. So Revit will automatically schedule all the materials out of it for you. But first, you need to know how many of this type you have. You're right not to show grids in their overall technical way, but you can maybe show a grayed out kind of line, you know, if you want to, just at least showing that there's a kind of an ownership change between the different elements in there. And at concept stage, yeah, I mean, the easy way to do it is just to black out all these walls, so they're completely blacked out. And wherever the front door is, put a big fat arrow. If that's the front door there, big fat arrow, and just say in, so nobody can make a mistake. So that's the front door, okay? There's also an in here I can see, but you can make that a smaller one or whatever. That's pretty much that. So that's if it's a concept plan. If it was just a typology plan, then I would blow the scale of the drawing up to maybe 1 to 50, turn it sideways, and then talk in detail about what's happening inside the house. So really show the furniture and put some colors on it. So what we're kind of missing here, it's not entirely necessary, but it often helps, especially in a situation like this. You're often sitting around a table with the client, the architect, the engineer, and then the estate agent. So the estate agent is there, and they don't understand anything about anything. So enough colors to make them feel as if you're not taking the piss out of them. You have to be friendly to those guys, okay? And that's not even a joke. That's because they tend to have the client's ear. So if you have an estate agent, he just talks about money. And the client is concerned that he's going to lose money, he wants to make money, and so on. So if the estate agent sets himself up as the guy who's an expert on something about money, the client is going to listen to him, even though they don't really know what they're talking about most of the time. Okay, so that's the plan view. Now, the other thing we can do in here, if I just activate that view here, is because it's a professional client, I talked about the dimensions. You have the main dimensions. You might put some internal dimensions in there, just very basic internal dimensions, because it's a professional client. We can also put on some spot elevations. So if I go in here and say, what do we got? What kind of elevations have we got? Target elevation, is that the right type? If I go in here and say, it doesn't want to work on that. Have you got no floors in there?
Yeah.
There's no floors on the ground floor? Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Let's go ahead and see. Let's try that again. Spot elevation.
I don't know if it works inside.
It does. It does, yeah. It does.
I have problems with it as well.
Have you? Okay. Maybe that's the new version of Revit or something. But it seems like you have.
Yeah, I have a floor.
Okay, so there's just no floor in there. Is that a floor or is it a? Yeah, it's a floor. That's weird. Let's try level 2. It's working on level 2 for some reason, but it's not working on your terrace. Okay, that's pretty bizarre. It might actually have to do with the view range. Oh, is it not?
It's starting on the first one.
You
Yeah.
did.
The house is like that. There's a bottom and there's a floor in it.
Let's just try that. Yeah, now it's working. No, it was to do with the view. The view plane was too high in it, but anyway. So you could set a level in there like that. And the interesting thing is, because if you have a bedroom here, for example, and you have a terrace here, and you have a spot elevation, and they're exactly the same height, to me, let me just switch that leader off. To me, that says, well, what's going on in there? How can you have a terrace at exactly the same height as the floor? Because if we go into the section here, let's go into the section view. There's a terrace, and there's a bedroom. So this is where setting up the levels actually starts to make some sense. If this is a living room or something, what you have here is a flat roof, which is a perfect cold bridge. and you also have a coal bridge coming down through this external area to here. You also have an issue of, if this is 200 millimeters, is it concrete? If this concrete is continuous, is that all the way going through here as well in terms of coal bridge, and so on and so on. So you have those issues straight away with the design. So these are the things you have to solve. So straight away you can start to say, well, this is a big key junction. This is a big key junction. And everything that happens down here is a key junction, and everything that happens here is a key junction. So by drawing this element, you can say that actually there are some significant key junctions that are going to have to be designed in here. And is this a window and an external wall from a terrace to an external wall? Is it glazed? You don't know.
We
You
don't
know,
know.
just for the thing. So what we have here is, you know, key junction 1, key junction 2, 3. So immediately you're starting to set up your details, because this is a classic problem. And there's only two ways to deal with it. You either lower the roof in such a way that you can put enough insulation in here, or you build up the floor outside here and fill it with insulation, and then you have to deal with how do you get from inside to outside and so on. So straight away you're starting to think about those stuff even at concept stage. And you know, that's the kind of thing that maybe a professional client would be looking at as well. Okay. So on top of that, if I just close that down, on top of that you can also put a spot elevation, different type of elevation here. We want a kind of maybe beam elevation. Is that a good one? Yeah. So we can get an elevation of each finished level. And that's mostly for the local authority, at least to start with.
Do you feel you leave just levels in the section?
Yeah, it's kind of, it's more like a graphical, it's like an aesthetic thing, because Revit comes with this kind of ugly graphical setup to start with. So you can do a lot of work on how you actually present your drawings as a kind of a branding for your firm. So that's really what I'm talking about here, is the drawings themselves are really representing the company. You know what I mean? So you end up with a house style or a standard template that you always use for each case. And it usually looks better. You might leave the level lines in there, but take those kind of bubbles off the end, because that's real technical stuff. And also, we don't really use those in Europe anyway, those bubbles. We use these arrows more. But, you know, the top height of everything from natural ground level is something that's required in Denmark anyway, because they have natural ground level, because they don't have anywhere else. So that means is that similarly to the plan, you want to continue your house all the way out to the middle of the street out here. Maybe not the middle of the street, but certainly to the edge of the pavement, to wherever your car is parked. And that means is that the total height, not just the height to the edge here, but the height to the top of the building. And I mean the top of, if this is a roof light, it's likely that that roof light is going to project above the roof a certain amount. Otherwise, it's unlikely it's going to work correctly. So that actually might end up being a defining dimension for your entire project. If you say to the local authority, well, it's only ever going to be 8615 high, and then you go to the detail design, it turns out your roof light has to be this much higher, that might cause a problem. They might, depending on the personality of the person in there, that might actually cause you a lot of trouble. Something as simple as that. So I have done schemes where we had to do the entire technical plan based on, or the entire technical drawings based on this dimension that had been limited by the local authority, and we actually had to name it as the builders as the most critical thing in the entire project, is that you don't go beyond this point here, because if you go beyond that point here, you will be breaking the application requirements, which means that the local authority actually has the right to tear the entire thing down. It seems stupid, but that's just the way it is. So be careful when you have something like roof lights, because the actual construction is different to what you want them to look like. They're never flat. They're always, just to deal with water, they're always on top, unless it's very, very finely designed and expensive roof lights. Okay, so that dimension is important. The internal dimensions are important, because if you're dealing with estate agents, they always say things like, oh, is there high ceilings? Is there low ceilings? This kind of stuff. So if you have even a ceiling that's 300 millimeters higher than the average, and the client agrees to it, it adds a certain amount to the price, quite a lot to the price actually, because it's just more pleasant to live in a house like that. The minimum in Denmark is 2.4. In other countries, it's 2.45. If you have it up to 2.7 or whatever, you're talking about a high quality development. Here I can see it's 2.7 floor to floor, so this is probably 2.45, 2.5, something like that inside.
What's the maximum in Denmark?
There's no maximum. You can have it as high as you want, as long as you don't break this top of the thing. Sorry, I'm waiting for a message. My son is in hospital at the moment. He's getting operated on. Okay. Oh, that's on video as well. I'll have to clip that out. So the other thing is always align or allow people to align themselves in the project at all times. And by that, the easy thing to do is to just go in here and say, bedroom 1, for example. And then just move it into place. And same thing down here, whatever that is, living room. So that means people aren't confused when they look at your concept drawing. So we should also see furniture and all that kind of stuff in the background there, but I know you're getting around to that. Colors and shading, maybe not so much colors, but certainly a certain amount of depth can be brought out in the product as well. Okay, so that's the sections. Any questions so far? Now, the other thing we have is when you make an elevation, remember you're making an elevation of 6 houses. So it's possible that this is...
It's not the right elevation, it's in another file.
It's in another file, yeah.
So
Okay, well, just for other people then. Just for other people, is like you don't make an elevation of the 2 sides of the house unless this side is an end wall and there's a door in it and all that kind of stuff. It's a realistic elevation that you would see when you look at the house in reality. You got a flying car there. I know it's not flying, it's just got tin wheels. So what you want to show is a section through the house. Again, there should be all 6 houses here, or at least some adjacent houses showing what's happening at least 1.5 meters on both sides. Because it's a concept drawing as well, let's go and, have we got any windows in this one? Yeah, okay. Because it's a concept drawing, I would say also you need to have, let's just zoom in a little bit more. Take the grids away, or at least loosen them up a little bit, make them gray or something like that. You don't need all these 600mm grids. We only did that in the first semester, just so that people really got the idea of the 600mm. But just wherever the structural walls are is where you put the grid lines. You don't need grids every 600mm anymore. Not for concept drawings. Yeah, for Alan's constructional drawings. Yeah, it's a module, but it's not a structural grid. It's a modular grid, which is slightly different. So for the actual drawings, you don't need it. You can do some stuff like this, for example, is a very technical looking section head. So you can modify the sections so that they don't, if I just edit that one, for example, we could change the tag at the end to, something else, probably. Yeah, you can just hide it, but it's also nice to have a,
So we should keep it.
if you show a section somewhere else, I don't think, what is the N one called? If you're showing the actual section view somewhere else, then you need to show the section lines, all right. But you can do them in a much more relaxed way, and often we can change the section head to the same as what is the tail? The tail is called tail fill standard. So we just call it tail fill standard and press OK. You get something like that. But then you can also press this little break mark in the middle here. See that? And then you can just say, well, I don't want the entire line going across my beautiful elevation. So this tells us there's a section there, but it doesn't tell us, it doesn't actually break the elevation. So you can look at the elevation. Similarly, let's just switch that off for the moment. Oh, shit. Why isn't this working? want to kind of make it as clear as possible so you really get a good sense as to what's going on in there. And again, because it's concept stage, you can turn on realistic, you can turn on shadows to get a certain amount of depth in there. But that's pretty grim looking as it is right now. So other than playing with the materials, which you can do, the other thing is you can go into graphical display. And I would turn on smooth lines, which is here. I will also turn on silhouettes, which makes everything pop a little bit out of the screen when you use it. Play with the shadows, turn on the ambient shadows. In terms of lighting, we can turn the shadows right down, and we can turn the ambient light right up and apply that. You know, and start to kind of play with what you want to get out of that as to how bright it needs to be. Maybe that's a little bit too much.
It is the north sides.
Yeah. But sometimes you don't want to set the elevation view, for example. Down here, if I set sun settings, we're just saying sunlight from top right. So it's not really giving you a realistic sunlight, it's just giving you an idea of the modeling of the face of it. So the other thing then we can do is very simply using the same one, graphic display, we can change the exposure. So enable photographic exposure, and we can correct the colors, because the colors in Revit tend to be extremely saturated, which means that very, very colorful. So we can kind of turn it down a little bit and apply it. And I think that takes a while to come through. Yeah, there you go. And then again, you can play with the lighting again as to how much ambient light you put in there, and so on and so on, until you get a kind of a color scheme that you're happy with. That doesn't look that great, but I'm not crazy about those bricks anyway. We can turn up the highlights, and we can turn the shadows down, and we'll turn up the white point a little bit. Whoops, that was a bit too much. You know, you can kind of make it warmer until you get a kind of a realistic viewpoint. And then in the background, you can either put a sky straight in. I think they have a sky set up. It's kind of a dark sky. You can find your own sky, or you can just put in a kind of a gradient. And the standard setup is just kind of a gray thing. It's kind of a bit too yellow there. I'll just move that back down again. And you can leave the levels on, all right, but I would definitely switch these bubbles off, and you can just do that by clicking on them and turning off this tick box over here. And then you can, there isn't a lot of modeling on this, so we're not getting a lot out of it in terms of the shadows and stuff, but you can kind of play with how the windows are displayed as well as to how reflective they are and so on. You can also make the glass transparent if you want to, so you can see right into the house or whatever. So, so that would be like the beginnings of a concept view. We still need to dimension it up, the overall dimensions, and for concept stage, but the most important thing now is to make it, you know, realistic and human. Just put a few people in there, and, you know, trees and cars and stuff, so people get a sense of scale. People are very important, and they have to be exactly the right height. Otherwise, nobody understands what's going on. Okay, so that's that. Any questions about that stuff?
So we can use a different scale also if immediately the deliverables is just 100, 1 to 100.
A different. What do you mean a different scale?
Instead of
If you said, okay, this is the length of the house, and then you just drew that this way across, well, it's probably about that big. But there's still also the roads and the pathways to keep in there. So you still need to have all that stuff in there. So it actually will be the entire, pretty much the length of the whole thing. Also, it's a good idea in here, like Andre has done, to have a key plan somewhere. I would set up your sheets that they have a key plan in the corner here, just as an image that just comes in with every title block. And then you can just use it for everything, basically. So that means you would have like all 6 houses here, you know, at the bottom, bum, 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 and then you could say, okay, this is the rounding of this, and you would just draw a box around it in red or something. You know, simple as that. That means that people just don't get lost in where it is. But your section would take up the whole thing. I mean, they have what's the section look like in here? Yeah, okay, so then if we got long section here. Yeah, so if you continued this section with the pathways and stuff, it would pretty much take up the whole thing, you know. The other reason is, I mean, in the old days, you used to be able to put a load of drawings on a piece of paper. That's because it cost them a lot of money for each one of those sheets. But all the new filing systems that are coming out now make you put single drawings on single sheets. That's just the way it's been for 15 years now. So you used to like have something like this, and you might have some details over here, and you might have some more information over here, and some perspectives and stuff. But you don't do that anymore, especially not with the computer generated stuff. Yeah. So anyway. So then, if we go in here, now what I want to talk about now is just a little bit about line weights, because the thing that gets people is they do a lot of good modeling work, but the line weights are what kind of screws them up. Because, I mean, these ones are actually quite nice. They work quite well. You can see you've got a thick line around. I think this is the standard one, is this? This is just the standard line weights, yeah. You can see there's an issue here, is that you're, unless you wanted to do that. Did you? No. Do you know what that is? Yeah.
Like, the internal wall is connecting like different parts, like the external, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Looking for the same material.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I won't get into that. Okay, so what I'll talk about here then is how do you kind of control the thickness of the lines. You can see here these very nice thick lines around the walls, but then the lines inside the walls have a much lower weighting. You can actually control all that stuff too. And the way to do that is to come over here to this visibility and graphics. So these 2 buttons really control how your drawing is going to look. This one here is the one I was talking about earlier, which deals with like all the kind of shaded stuff. And this one up here is just kind of the drafting stuff. So we have all the usual things here. But down at the bottom here, we've got a button called Object Styles. And Object Styles, if we open it up, this allows you to control how all the different elements are represented globally in the view. So if we, for example, go into doors here, let's just roll down a little bit. And I click on doors. You can see that it's divided the doors into architraves, cavity closes, elevation suite, blah, 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 you know, all these pieces. And you can give each of these pieces a separate line weight. And the line weights are represented by these numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's just cancel out of that.
And if you want it for like 3 plans, the same settings, can you do it as well?
I'll talk about that too, yeah. So where the line weights are is if you go into manage here, where's manage? And you go into additional settings, you can see there's this button here called line weights. And here is where the line weights are set up. And they're set up differently, obviously, for every scale of drawing so that they don't represent in different ways. But you can also modify them. These 3 pens here, these are old style Rotring ink pens that we used to use 100 years ago to make drawings. So the thinnest one was always the 1.18 millimeters. Then there was the 0.25, and then there was the 0.35. And the 0.35 would always be the external walls, or the outside of the walls. And the 0.18 would always be the finest part. And then they got really high tech in the 90s, and they brought out a 0.1, and that was really cool. Everybody loved that 0.1 because it was so thin. But it actually does something. If I, for example, change these to 0.1, everything to 0.1, you know, it will give a kind of a finer thing for the entire drawing. So I've actually changed, every time you do a 1 to 10 drawing now, the thinnest line will be a 0.1. So you can kind of play with that as well and apply it. It doesn't change this because it's a 1 to 100 drawing. But anyway, so let me go back in here. So visibility graphics, go down to object styles, and we go down to doors and open it up again. And let's say we can say we've got the architrave here. So assuming that the architrave is that they've put it in the right position, It should be set to 1, and then we've got the frame is set to 2. So let's say we wanted to say the frame, we want that to be 1 instead. So you can just go in here and say, now I want that to be 0.1. And if I apply that, you can see it suddenly made it much clearer down here. And you can do the same thing and everything. The panel here, we can change that if you want that to be really read. Okay, 4, that's extreme, but anyway. So, where did I do that? Panel 4, plan swing 1, structural, holding architecture. The other thing to be concerned about is, are they actually have the person who's made the actual family, have they also used the same principle? So I go in here, material door panel. Anyway, let's leave that for the moment. So let's, because that's the thing about Revit is, if the family hasn't been set up in the correct way, none of this stuff will work, okay? So when you're installing different families, you need to be concerned about that too, okay? So let's go back in here for a second. Visibility graphics, object styles, we go down to walls. And walls, you see it has one value here for the cut line, which is the 3. So that's the 0.35. So if I wanted to really express the walls, that should work if I change it to 4, for example, which is a 0.5 millimeter. Press OK. So you can see it's got a hell of a lot thicker there, and so on and so on. So you can keep playing with that kind of stuff. Back down into walls again. Common edges is also, common edges are the lines that connect all the different layers of the wall. So you can also play with that. So if I wanted to change that quality, I could maybe change the color of those. So let's just make it a kind of a dark gray instead to change the quality of the drawing. So it's got a little bit of a, you can't really see it that much on the screen here, but when it prints, you would have a slightly different quality for the drawing. You can see when it zooms out, it's got a different kind of expression. So that's really how you control, kind of in global terms, all the qualities of the graphics of the different objects in here. So it's object styles is how you do that kind of stuff, okay? And then the last thing to think about there is that sometimes you might have a situation where you want to, really, let's say we wanted to talk about this element here. Let's say this was a structural thing rather than a mistake. We don't want to change it specifically. We might want to just change the line work. So we can then just go into Modify, and there's a button here called Line Work. And then we can just go in here and say, well, I want to make that wide lines. And then you can just go and click. Oh, won't let us click on that one. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it'll allow us to click on this one, but it won't allow us to click on the other one for some reason. I think it's because it's an external thing. But anyway, so the line work option allows you to kind of select the individual lines and give them a specific quality as well, so you can control that too. So all that comes down to is that people get very focused on the modeling part of Revit, but actually you have to think that the end product is always a set of drawings. So the way you control the graphics of the drawings is pretty important. I'm trying to think, is there anything else I want to say about concept drawings? Nothing more. Any questions?
Is this for deadline for Friday? All this?
If you reach it. I mean, this is. I'm just showing you how to make a nice set of concept drawings. So what we can do, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Let's say, for example, you have a house type like this, and I'm going to try and draw straight on this, which is quite difficult, but anyway. You might just say, there's one way of doing it is you just make a model that is purely stops wherever the painted surface of the wall is. So it's got no walls at all. It's just internal walls, furniture, kitchen, stuff like that, but it's got no structural elements at all. So that might be one model. Then you could link that into another model that is purely concrete wall. Let's say you're making your house out of concrete. It might just be the main concrete walls like that, whatever your windows are like, but with no external leaf. So that might be a model of, or there's kind of different ways to do it. if we do it this way, for example, let me just get started again because I didn't prepare this stuff. If you've made it just an internal model of all the internal stuff without thinking about that, you could make a 6-house model that deals with all the conditions except for the internal conditions. So it has all the external walls, all the structural walls, and nothing else. Yeah, so then you might link that one in and copy it 6 times, for example. So that means the junctions would be right. The way we used to do it is that we used to do it by making a model that had this, then we would make a model that had just the concrete, completely the concrete. And then we would have another model that would have all the junctions that went around the ends of it and so on like that. So that's one way of doing it. But I don't want to tell you specifically do it this way because it's about how you come to those conclusions yourselves, you know. But the main thing is, how would you do it in such a way that you don't have to repeat yourself or copy? Use the computer for what it's good for. It will copy things hundreds of times without you having to worry about it. So use it for that. So try and make the process as efficient. So what I would do then is I would take the 6-house model and then link that into the site model. And then the site model would be usable by somebody else. These drawings aren't really doing us any good, are they? This one.
Understood.
Yeah. Okay.